Hi guys, welcome back to Too Cool for Middle School. Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite things, reading. The trouble is that as an English teacher, I'm sure you have all encountered this, but even if you are someone who loves reading, it's hard to transfer that love onto your students and get them as excited about reading as you are. So even though I currently read a lot, there was definitely a time when I didn't. So during my master's program, I had to read tons and tons of historical monographs and articles and all kinds of stuff. And then as soon as I finished my master's degree, I was just like, I don't feel like picking up a book maybe ever again. I was like, I'm kind of done. Like I'm burnt out on reading. But I remember that one evening, my husband came home and he just brought me these two books. He was like, I was listening to NPR and they were talking about these two books and they just sounded like ones that you would like. And it was two Celeste Ng books. And I was like, oh, okay, I haven't heard of these. So I read both of them like really quickly, loved both of them. And then I think what I did was I went to Instagram to like see what other people were saying about these books. I'm blanking on the titles right now, but you know, her two really famous ones. And so I think from there I started to get into like Bookstagram a little bit and, you know, find accounts of other people who were reading similar books and then like posting about books that they had read. And that got me excited to read again. I would get all of these book recommendations and it just kind of like took off from there. And I started reading a lot more and then also talking about it on my channel and on Instagram. So of course you can go back on this channel and find like tons and tons and tons of book review videos and then all over my Instagram as well. I did Goodreads for a little while, but there's just like too many platforms for me to keep track of. So I have a bookshop.org. I have that account linked down below and it has all of the books that I've read like in the past year and the year before that and like different collections of books that I recommend for middle schoolers and stuff like that. So you can take a look at that website and look at all the different like collections that I've made there. And then if you order any books through them, it supports independent bookstores. So it's kind of nice to order through them rather than like Amazon. So anyway, I'm always kind of trying to replicate my experience a little bit with my students in trying to get them to read, but then also not like overwhelming them with so much work like after they read a book that they have to, you know, maybe do a huge book report or whatever. Then it kind of like kills your motivation to read, kind of like makes you resent the book that you just read. So I don't do book reports really. I don't do reading logs, but we do a couple of different things. So I do require my students to read 10 books in a semester. And rather than keep a traditional reading log, I just have them do kind of like an Instagram style way of tracking your books. Because while I don't think it's very fun for everybody to like write a book report and like review every single book you read, it's nice to just like track how many you've read and just have a little like visual reminder of all the things that you've read. I just have them take a picture of the book or even like a screenshot of the image, but I just kind of liked the picture thing because then there was just like a little bit more certainty that they actually had the book and actually read it. And so I had them just put it on like a Google drawing and give a really quick review. So what I had them do is just write like one sentence. So kind of like on the back of a book, or sometimes it's on the front, where there's a little one sentence review. Like for this one, a fine choice for readers who want war stories that include plenty of action as well as reflection. Like that kind of a review, just something like really quick, just so they can remember like what they thought about it. And so I know like, oh, did you like this one? Was it good? Was it awful? Was it a waste of your time? Because if there's a book that I read all the way through that I ended up not liking, I definitely want to say so. Another motto that I have though is life is too short to read books you don't like. So I do always tell them that as well. If you start one and you're just really not into it, just pick a different one. Don't finish reading a book you don't like unless you know, it's like the ending that you don't like, right? Like you get all the way there and then you're like, what? That kind of ruined the whole thing. But if you're just like not into it at the beginning, maybe just pick something else. There are plenty of books in the world. So the other thing, I guess, that I kind of like learned from my experience, you know, is just my husband just gave me these 2 books. So I had them on hand. They were like accessible to me, right? And I was like, oh, okay, I could try reading these. So in my classroom, I have tons of books that are available to my students that they can check out at any time. So we do have, you know, the school library, but some kids just don't make it down there. Some kids like live there, but you know, some just never really go there. I kind of forget to schedule time for our classes to go to the library, to be honest. It's only open like a few hours a day, and we have a rotating schedule, and so it's kind of hard for me to like line up when my English classes could all go in the same day. It's just a little bit hard. So I like to just have books available for my students. And then I also really, I love like booktube like this. I love watching videos where people review books and tell me about ones that they really liked, or I like reading about those on Instagram. So we started this last year during virtual learning, but I just had my students pick one of the books that they had read this semester and do a little book presentation. So I can share with you the little slide that I made that just has the requirements. It's nothing super intense. I just want them to consider things like, is this book a mirror for you or a window for you? So like, is it reflecting your own life back to you and that's why you like it because you kind of identify with it? Or is it exciting because it's giving you a glimpse into somebody else's life or into a different world? I asked them about like minor characters and the setting and like what type of reader would like this book. Because just because I tell them that a book is good doesn't mean that they're gonna read it. So I want them to hear recommendations from each other throughout the semester. So I just have like a sign up sheet and they just sign up whenever they want. They've got most of the Fridays in the semester. They just write down their name and the book that they want to present on. And I don't really monitor the books that they are choosing in any way. So for their 10 books in the semester, they can basically read whatever they want. They always ask if they can read like graphic novels and I just say yes. They want to read like manga and stuff. And I just don't want it to be 100% the same thing. So I just tell them like, it can't all be that, but you can have some of that mixed in. We take like a Lexile level test at the beginning of the year. We take it like every quarter, I think. So they kind of know where their reading level is. I don't pay a ton of attention to that. Like that's more for me so that when I'm choosing texts, either that we're going over as a class or like as options for the class, that I'll just kind of know like what level different students are at. They can choose books, you know, that are at their Lexile level. They can like look up the Lexile level on Amazon or wherever, but they don't have to. So last year I did have a couple of kids that tried to read like Clifford the Dog and Jack and the Beanstalk, and those were way, way, way below their reading level. So obviously we're not doing that, but if it's somewhere near a middle school reading level or like a young adult book, that gives you hundreds of thousands of options. So basically anything in there is fine. So the other thing that I started doing this year that I just think is really fun and allows me to give students some good book recommendations is, okay, when they sign up for their day that they're going to present a book, so they're gonna do their little book presentation thing, which takes like 5 minutes in class. They just turn it in on Google Classroom, they make their slides, and so then I just open it, they stand at the front of the room, I just like tap through their slides and they tell us about the book. So if they want to, for extra credit, they can plan ahead and choose a book that goes with that month's theme. And I just thought it would be nice to have monthly reading themes. This is another thing that I see like on Instagram. So there'll be people that have little like book clubs and they'll choose a theme for their month, or they'll have little reading challenges. And I think that's just a nice way to keep reading interesting. Plus, one thing that I notice with middle schoolers is that the kids who are like always reading, you know, like they're not even paying attention because they're like always reading whatever book they have, they are just reading their way through one series. The one a lot of them have right now is like The Keeper of the Lost something. I haven't read them. I have them all. I like provide them all. They love them. It sounds really, really good. But I don't want them to just read the same thing all the time. I want them to like every so often just break out of their typical habits and try something new. I think that books are just such a good way to introduce you to different perspectives or, you know, try out different genres or whatever. So this is optional, but for each month we have this different reading theme. And so if they present on one of the books in that month's reading theme, then they could get extra credit for their presentation. Or they could just read a book from the theme for fun, you know, just if they're having trouble like thinking of something to read. So what this allows me to do is give them 50 book recommendations all in one little document right here. And I have most of them in my classroom, so they're pretty easy to access, or they could get it from the public library or the school library or a Kindle version, or we use like Sora. They could do a Sora version. So whatever they want to do, however they want to read it. I try to just be pretty open about that. Like whatever way works for you to read and access books, it's fine with me. So I'm just going to walk you through what our monthly themes are going to be for the year. I have my lovely new computer right here. It's so much fun to have this new computer. It's big, it's a desktop. It's so different from like working on my laptop. Like usually I'm just like, I've written 2 books this way, but now my desktop computer, I'm like, oh, okay, I sit up now and like work with an erect spine, which is probably good for my stomach. If you missed any of my last videos, I'm pregnant right now. I'm like halfway through. I feel like I always want to see proof of this. So here we go. We got my big old belly, and I've just been, I mean, weekends I just live in like a big t-shirt and leggings because, yeah, why not? So anyway, over here I have my computer screen and my list. If you want to see exactly how all of the slides look, then you can just download these Google Slides from my Teachers Pay Teachers store. I'll link that down below. So for example, we began with September because we started school in August, and you know, we kind of had to get things moving. There wasn't really time for anybody to present in the month of August. So I just started with September. I mean, you could like talk about September's theme in August and like give students time to prepare. So that's how we did it. Okay, so I went with like national months for the most part. Some months just like didn't really have anything going on, so I just tried to like fill in different topics that I felt like were missing for those months. But for September, it's Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month. So students can read any book. It says read a book by an author with a protagonist or in a setting related to this theme. So they can choose anything. I provide 5 different book recommendations for each month. And I always try to offer like books at varying reading levels, and you know, some of them nonfiction and some fiction, and in like a variety of genres, so that they can see that this theme is overarching, but you can find something that you like or that like fits your typical reading tastes within each of the themes. So for September, I recommended Charlie Hernandez and the League of Shadows, Gods of Jade and Shadow, The House on Mango Street, Shadow Shaper. Didn't realize that the word shadow was in here so many times. And then Santiago's Road Home. So on these slides, they can click on the image of the book and it takes them to Amazon, not so that they can buy it from Amazon, but because Amazon just provides the most like comprehensive information about each book. It tells you the age level, like appropriateness of the book, as well as the like lexile level or reading level, because those are kind of 2 different things, right? Like you might have a really high reading level, but if it's like way above your age level, then it might not be the best fit, or like vice versa. Or if it's a little bit above and you know, you're mature, go for it. So anyway, at least it provides them with that information, tells them how many pages it is. And then of course there's like reviews and just like general information about the book, like a little overview. There are like professional reviews at the top, and then also just, you know, like buyer reviews later down. So I feel like just from that quick little Amazon click, they can get a pretty good sense of whether or not they would want to read that book. So with these slides, you as the teacher, if you downloaded these slides, you could switch out the books if there's something else that you like better. That's easy to do. You can just delete the image and add the image of whatever book you would like to replace it. And then you just link the Amazon page for that book to the image. And you can do all of that in Google Slides. So you can switch out any of these books if they're a little bit too young for your students or a little bit too old, or there's just one that you just don't like, or you're gonna be like using it later on in the school year. So maybe you don't want too many people like reading it early. You can definitely do that. And then if you didn't want to use this theme, I just put the themes on a white rectangle. So you could just place your own white rectangle over mine and cover that up, and then just type in a new theme. So if you want to change the September theme, you could do that. But if you don't want to spend a ton of time like thinking of themes for every single month, then they are also already there for you. So October's theme, which we are in right now, is disability awareness. I have a book of short stories listed on this one with 13 different authors who are all disabled. I have a nonfiction recommendation, a couple of like very middle school level books, and then one that's more like YA, like maybe high school if somebody wants to challenge themselves. So, you know, they can just kind of click through, see what they like, see if there's something different. For November, we're doing Native American Indigenous Heritage Month. All 5 of these that I have recommended are amazing. There are a few more that I would have put on this one, like the Barren Grounds, for example, but that is one that I'm hoping to save for literature circles a little bit later in the year, so I just like didn't put that one on there. So again, you could switch these out if that's one that you really wanted to recommend to your students. I have Ancestor Approved on here, which is a nonfiction option. For December, there was like not really any national months that I could find. So I was like, okay, what do we do in December? It's kind of cold. Like maybe you just want to like curl up with a book. I'm like, let's read some classic literature, because I tend to rarely recommend classic literature to my students, and I don't even really read it that often. So I was like, oh wait, this would be a good chance to just like grab something that people have read for generations. Like, sure, why not? So I have like Anne of Green Gables, The Hobbit. I recently ordered The Count of Monte Cristo for myself. So like I'm doing this challenge as well. So I just thought ahead to December, like I'm gonna read that one for the month of December. I don't think that I ever actually read that book. I love the movie, I love the story. I'm reading The Black Count right now, which is so good. It's a history of Alexander Dumas' life, and it's absolutely fascinating. So maybe I'll throw that one in as another recommendation. But you know, every so often, let's look to the classics, I guess. January also didn't have any very loud national months that I could find either. But I wanted to include a month where we read books about the environment and climate change. So I had read a couple of really good ones, so I wanted a place to recommend those. And then I found a few newer ones that I haven't read that I just added to the recommendation list. So I need to read those. I see them like stacked right here. I have a whole bunch of books right here that you can't see. They're just out of frame. So that's January. February is Black History Month. This one was actually kind of hard to find books for, because I really wanted all of the books in this category to have a strong historical perspective. You know, so not all of them were like history months. Some of them were just like heritage, and so that's a little bit more open. But for History Month, I was like, okay, we're gonna like find some good history. So like, for example, this is one of my favorite books, Making Our Way Home, The Great Migration and the Black American Dream by Blair Imani. So this is one of the recommendations. Stamped is one of the recommendations. Here's Stamped, and I have another copy in my classroom. Tristan Strong I included because it has so much African mythology in it, which very much relates to Black history in the United States. It would probably be nice to have another recommendation that's like not American, like maybe Caribbean or African or something. So The good thing with these is that I can always switch out books whenever I want to. It's really easy to do on these slides. Or I can just, tell them here are a few more recommendations that I have. So at the beginning of the month, like Friday was October 1st, and so I got out all of the books for October from my shelf and just like held them all up and did a little description of each one. And by the end of the day, I think all of them were gone. They were all checked out by students. So sometimes just, like highlighting books, it's kind of hard to like find something that you want to read sometimes if you're a little overwhelmed by like, what am I in the mood for? So if someone can kind of talk a book up for you, then you get a little more interested in it. Okay, moving on. So March is kind of similar to February. March we've got women's history. So I tried to find books that were specifically like historical books. Okay, so Finish the Fight is a non-fiction. I don't know where it is, but I think I have it around here somewhere. And then the other ones are like historical fiction, or even like the Radium Girls. That one is just history. It's just nonfiction, but there's a young reader edition of it. And a lot of students like that one. A lot of teachers like that one as well. So I just tried to find kind of quirky ones. And I tried to make sure that women's history doesn't turn into white women's history, as it does so often. So Finish the Fight is about the fight for the right to vote, but it does a great job of showcasing all different kinds of women who were involved in this fight. Fly Girl is another recommendation. This one's about a Black woman pilot. So if you are like switching them out, which is totally fine, that's just another thing to keep in mind, and you might even make your collection more diverse than mine, and that would be awesome. The good thing with this is that we have 10 different months, and so sometimes a book that you couldn't fit into one of the months, maybe you can fit into a different category. And if you want to do more than 5, you can fit more than 5 in there. I just didn't want to overwhelm my students too much. But April, I did Middle Eastern Heritage Month. I think as a national month, it's technically called Arab American Heritage Month. That would work as well. I just thought it was like slightly more inclusive to just say Middle Eastern Heritage, in case you were including books or, trying to include students who are from countries in the Middle East, but they are not considered Arab. And there are such great books in this category. I was like really excited for this category just because there are so many to put in here. More to the Story is a really good middle grades novel that is like a adaptation of Little Women, but instead it's a Muslim American family. Now, not everyone from the Middle East is Muslim, so I didn't want to like just choose all books that had that theme, but this is also a really great opportunity to include some really amazing books like Once Upon an Eid. I love this book. It's one of my favorites. The subtitle is Stories of Hope and Joy by 15 Muslim Voices. And now this one maybe doesn't completely fit the category because not all of the people in the stories and not all of the authors are from the Middle East. Islam is a global religion, so that one doesn't fit exactly, but I wanted to find a way to recommend that book, and this seemed like the best place to put it. So again, if that's not where you would put it or you would use something else, you can switch it out if you would like. For May, I had so many books that I wanted to use that it was hard to narrow it down to 5, but May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. This slide has some great recommendations. What I tried to do with this one is just make sure that all of the books were not focused on like all Chinese American characters or all Japanese American characters or whatever. I tried to like provide a little bit more variety. So Front Desk is by a Chinese American author. We Are Not Free is by a Japanese American author, I'm pretty sure. American is Paneer Pie is about an Indian American girl's experience. Outrun the Moon is another Chinese American experience book. And then A Pho Love Story is Vietnamese American centered. So just trying to provide a little bit of range within that category. And there are so many others that you could put in there as well. So that was a hard one to narrow down, man. And then lastly, for the month of June, I went up to June. I figured not too many people go into the month of July with their school year, and if they do, maybe you just take the last month off. So I didn't do July and August. But for June, we have LGBTQ Pride Month. And again, this is a category that just has so many amazing books. I have some that are at a little bit higher reading level. I did feel like it was a little bit more difficult to find just like middle grades books for this category, but I have been actually like receiving in the mail from different publishers lots of books that fit this category and that are written at that middle grades level. So I might even have to like update this with a few new recommendations, because I know I have a couple of like really great ones on my shelf. The highest level one I think that I have here is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. I really, really love that book. I think that like mature middle schoolers can do that one. I listened to the audiobook with Lin-Manuel Miranda narrating it, and it's so, so good. It's one of my faves. So that is all of the months. Again, there are plenty of things that you can edit if you feel like you want to change this for your particular students or your school or whatever. You want to switch out books, do whatever you want to do, but I've found this to be a really great way to just give us some intentionality in our reading and try to like challenge ourselves to find some new books. And it just gives me an opportunity to recommend new books at least once a month, just in case I forget to. And all of these, besides the classic literature ones, are like fairly new, you know, like the covers look really cool. They're eye-catching for students, set mostly, you know, like today, I guess, besides the historical fiction ones, but they're ones that like students will get into. I don't think these are going to be on their list of books that you don't finish because you don't like. I think these ones are going to be really good. So I'm excited to see how these work out in your classroom if you end up trying this out too. I just think it's a fun way to provide some new book recommendations for your students and help them to get excited about reading all different kinds of things. Even if they kind of have like a genre that they don't really like to break out of. Like some students just like realistic fiction, you know? They just want to read about like a kid in school going through school experiences, and that's just like their comfort zone. But that's fine, because in this recommendation list, you could read about a disabled student going through school, and a non-binary student going through school, and an Asian American student, or a Muslim student in the United States, or whatever. So, you know, I think it's fine if they're not always reading from like every single genre. There are just some genres that, you know, like we've tried and we just don't love, but it's still important to get like different perspectives and different types of authors and characters and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I've been talking about this for too long. I am gonna let you go. I will link all of this stuff down below. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Jensen has gone quiet, so that's actually more concerning than when he was making a ton of noise at the beginning. I'm gonna go see what's going on. All right, I will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day. Bye.